tradition in art and called for demolition of the status quo. They stunned Picasso with their daring ideas. Pablo's classmates also directed his attention to a more established, if less distinguished, side of Barcelona. The red light district, the Barrio Chino. The carnal scenes made a deep impression on Picasso and inspired his art for the rest of his life.
They had the Barrio Chino in Barcelona. I visited the Barrio Chino once after the Second World War. I think it was very much the way it had been 50 years before. They'd stand there on the dais, ogling the customers who were there in a deep-throated smoking mode. And the smoke rose like the mists of morning from these guys just looking at these whores and looking at them and looking at them. I still remember the way it was in that brothel. And you didn't dare to take one of the girls. I mean, God, it was like a river of disease going up and down the stairs.
It's an old joke in Spain that men spend Sunday mornings in church, Sunday afternoons at the bullfight, and Sunday evenings in the brothel. So it's no surprise that just as he experienced his sexual indoctrination, he was being trained to paint pious religious subjects, such as his 1897 picture called Science and Charity.
Science and Charity is a painting Picasso's father thought up. He wanted his son to make a living doing huge salon paintings which would sell for a lot of money. It's a fascinating painting for just little details. For instance, the way the paint drips down from the window, the sort of brown stains on the wall, the kind of things Picasso would do much later. I mean, they have little sort of early glimmers of genius in the painting.
As Pablo's immense talent became more obvious, José decided he belonged in a more distinguished academy, this time in Spain's true art capital, Madrid. So in 1897, for the first time, the 16-year-old Pablo was on his own. He now stood face to face with the masterworks of Goya, Velázquez, and El Greco. But Madrid lacked the vibrance and modernity of Barcelona, and the rigid atmosphere at the Academy left Picasso feeling stifled and bored. He was miserable.
Academic painting was dead for him. He could be a master of academic painting, but he knew that it had nothing more to do with the life he lived.
Picasso was a restless child in a way, but also an adult artist in single pursuit of his vision. He wrote to a friend back in Barcelona about something he was hoping to create. "Nobody else has ever done anything half so shocking as my drawing is going to be. You'll see."
Picasso was very competitive, and from the beginning, I mean, he's pitting himself against contemporary painters and masters of the past. He wanted, in a way, to vanquish these great painters, or at the same time, absorb them into himself.
By 1898, Pablo felt nothing but contempt for the Academy and everything it stood for. And he realized that his own father was a hopeless victim of this tired tradition. Pablo became determined not to follow him and dropped out of the Academy. Rebellion gave him a new bravado. He no longer wanted just to outdo his father. Picasso told a friend, "In art, one has to kill one's father." Pablo, now 17 and more defiant than ever, went home to Barcelona. To pay his rent, he did commercial work, posters for carnivals and magazine illustrations. Pablo and his friends drank and argued the night away at the cafe called Els Quatre Gats, the Four Cats, headquarters for the city's avant-garde. The cafe atmosphere was heady, with new ideas from Paris and abroad. By day, Picasso sketched constantly. And in early 1900, the 18-year-old, drawn here in a self-portrait, mounted his first serious exhibition. His friends helped him hang a series of unframed portraits with tacks. The critics came, but their reviews were harsh. One accused Picasso of being uneven and sloppy. But critical success was just around the corner. Shortly after the show, he got news that one of his paintings had been chosen for the Spanish pavilion at the World's Fair, to be held in Paris later that year. In October 1900, just before his 19th birthday, Pablo and a friend left for Paris. Not only would his work be seen by thousands, he was on his way to greet the new century in the most modern city in Europe. Paris, 1900. In the shadow of the tallest man-made structure on Earth, people gathered from around the world to take a peek into the next century at the World's Fair. And it was that October, shortly before his 19th birthday, that Picasso laid eyes on the City of Light for the first time. Picasso was virtually penniless, but his companion, Carlos Casagemas, had both money and contacts. They borrowed a friend's flat amid the cafes, nightclubs, and artist studios in the scruffy neighborhood of Montmartre. In this painting, Picasso documented his group of Spanish friends, who spoke barely any French, huddling together in Montmartre. Paris was a world away from the buttoned-up society of Andalusia. Picasso reveled in the sheer lustiness of the city. But he felt acutely the condescension of Parisians towards Spaniards.
He was not only a Spaniard in Paris, and the Spanish accent's looked down upon by elegant people who speak French with a certain elegance, particularly the French. But he not only was a Spaniard, but he came from Malaga, where even the Spaniards look down from people like Malaga. You know, they look upon him as sort of being lower grade Hispanics.
Picasso and Casagemas met a group of flirtatious models who spoke a few words of Spanish, and each paired off with a girlfriend. Here, Picasso sketched himself with his girlfriend Odette, and Casagemas with the girl who stole his heart, Germaine. To celebrate Picasso's 19th birthday, they all went to see his painting at the exposition. Picasso's contribution, which he later painted over, may have been at the cutting edge in Barcelona, but in Paris, it barely stood out. It was a humbling experience, but Picasso also took it as a challenge. Gallery after gallery was filled with the work of the top French painters. For the first time, he saw the luminous colors of the Impressionists, Monet, Renoir, and Degas, all but bursting out of their frames. He was dazzled. He was also moved by the intimacy and emotion in the works of their predecessors, Delacroix, Daumier, and Manet. And the exquisite draftsmanship and sensuality in the work of Dominique Ang made a lasting impression on Picasso. At night, Pablo and his friends went to the Moulin Rouge and Moulin de la Galette, steamy dance halls made famous in the paintings of Renoir and Toulouse-Lautrec. In a direct challenge to these Parisian giants, Picasso painted his own version.
In that painting, he's going directly into competition with Toulouse-Lautrec and Renoir. They both painted the Moulin de la Galette, and they'd both done spectacular big paintings of the crowded music hall with these dancers and can-can and all the rest of it. And I think Picasso, at this very young age, pits himself against the great modern masters.
One of the most progressive collectors in France bought the painting immediately, and 3 pastels had sold within days of his arrival. He was encouraged. If his work continued to sell, he could move to Paris permanently. But for now, Picasso and his friend headed back to Spain. Casagemas couldn't stand being away from Germaine and dashed back to Paris to propose marriage. She, however, didn't share his enthusiasm, and in February 1901, Picasso was in Madrid when he got terrible news. Casagemas, lovesick over Germain, had shot himself in the head. It happened in the middle of a Paris cafe in front of a group of friends, including Germain.
When Picasso, who was in Madrid at the time, heard this, he was absolutely destroyed, because he felt that if he'd stayed on with Casagemas and seen him through these crises, that he would still be alive.
In the very midst of Picasso's horror and guilt over his friend's suicide, came good news from Paris. The distinguished art dealer Ambroise Vollard had seen his work and was offering to give him a one-man show in June.
Vollard had been the dealer of Cézanne and Gauguin, the great artists of the late 19th century, post-impressionists. He was taking on